Welcome again to another one of our interesting and motivating and enjoyable, powerful programs. And this is Pastor Peter Christian Hessing. And thank you for joining me. And I hope that everything is going well with you and that I pray that God will bless you and your family and friends and children. You're succeeding in your work and kids doing well in school, and also you having the best of health there. Yeah, and today we're gonna talk about really what's happening in the world. We do have this presidential election going on, and we have to pray to God that we elect the right person to be the president. Whether we're going to elect a Democrat or we're going to elect a Republican, and we have to really pray for the right leaders who can help us here, in America to end poverty and homelessness and create jobs and also, to have health care for everybody, and also to make peace around the world there. And also, we have to solve the problem of the wars in the Middle East. There, we have problems in Syria with all these refugees having to flee their homes, and we have the problem with these terrorist groups in Iraq and in Afghanistan. We have the ISIS in Iraq and in Syria, and the Taliban in Afghanistan. And we're having also these terrorist attacks here in America. There we had the San Bernardino attack here, and we have also the attacks in Paris and so forth. So we really have to do this to stop this terrorism, to create peace and love among Christian, Muslims, and Jews. Where as I've been saying that I am really lucky to be alive because before 9/11, I worked in the World Trade Center before it was blown up. I had about 2 or 3 jobs in the World Trade Center. And I think it's a miracle of God that God led me away from New York at that time. My mother retired, went to Florida, and half my family basically moved to Florida. And God led me to go to visit them in Florida, and that saved me from the 9/11 attack because I worked as a social worker, and sometimes we worked the night shift. I would our job was to go around New York, particularly in the banks, and try and help the homeless people who would sleep in the ATMs, and we would try and persuade them to go to a shelter and give them food. And sometimes I worked the night shift, they're monitoring, all the banks in the Wall Street area, and I would work the night shift. I would get off about 7 o'clock, and I would go down to the World Trade Center because there is a subway down by the World Trade Center. We used to have a subway that goes underneath the World Trade Center, and I would go there, take the subway at about 7, 8, 9 o'clock, which is at the very time that it was attacked, and I would go home. So God took me away because I was just, that was the place that I constantly went to the World Trade Center. And if God didn't take me away, I would have been blown up in that World Trade Center. So we really have to stop terrorism and bring Christians and Muslims and Jews together. I think you have to educate. You really need to have education. I think only by educating Christians on Islam, educating Muslims on Christianity, educating Jews on Christianity and Islam, educating people of all different religions, so you don't have this ignorance. And I know that a lot of Christians are not able to study the Quran and so forth. And you have a lot of Muslims who are not able to study the Bible, and you have Jews who are not able to really go a lot into Islam and a lot into into Christianity, and so you have this misunderstanding. We have these terrorist groups now who are trying to, you have ISIS and Al Qaeda and Shabab and all these Taliban, that they sort of take the scriptures to an extreme. And what I was very lucky to study the Quran, and I was very stunned when I studied the Quran, because I felt that the Quran was probably, there would be this big difference between the Quran and the Bible. But the Quran is really written based on the Bible. There, nearly every part of the Quran is based on the Bible. Muhammad, he was trying to help the poor people in Saudi Arabia, and he prayed to God, and he started, he founded Islam, but he was also exposed to the Jewish teachings and the Christian teachings. So he wrote the Quran based on what he had learned in the Jewish and the Christian scriptures, and he told the Arabic people that they would have to accept the Christians and the Jews, because Christianity and Judaism is like about 2,000 years before the Quran was written. And I just want to go briefly through it, that nearly every part of the Quran is written based on the Bible. You have, it starts off with the Al-Fatiha, then you go to the Al-Baqarah, which tells you about Adam there in verse 32, and he taught Adam and gave him the names and put objects of these names before the angels there, and it talks about the children of Israel having to obey the covenant, and it talks about Moses there in verse 54. Remember when we gave Moses the book, and so forth. And we're going to spend more time, I really want to spend more time on it there. And it also talks about Jesus. If you go down to verse 88, where it talks about, and verily we gave Moses the book and caused the messengers to follow in his footsteps after him, and to Jesus the son of Mary we gave manifest signs and strengthened him with the Spirit. So the Quran believes in Jesus as the Son of God. The Quran supports Christians and Jews. It says in verse 136, and okay, say, be ye Jews or Christians, then you are being rightly guided. So we're going to do more on it. It's very similar to the Bible. It supports Christians and Jews. It is not against Christians and Jews. What the Quran is against, the people who do not believe in God and the people who worship idols. So we're going to be doing more. Remember to look for my book, the 24/7 Safety Inspection System, to save the world from nuclear war and global warming. And we have these CDs coming up. We really have to ban the first strike use of nuclear weapons. Have a 24/7 system to save the world from nuclear war there. And look for my CD, which is going to be coming out, and there. And peace and love. John Megan, Peter Christian Hessing. Thank you. God bless.